Let us solve the exercise number 6 in the part A of Java lab. In this particular exercise, we are supposed to create a matrix that contains integer values having varied number of columns within each row, and we are supposed to print the row-wise sum. So what does this mean? Let's say we have a matrix here, and generally we know that matrix contains rows and columns, and all the columns are same for every row. So whenever we think of a matrix, we say there is a matrix with two rows and two columns. That is, this is a 2 cross 2 matrix with the two rows and two columns. So we assume that the first row also contains two columns and the second row will also contain two columns. So this is generally a square matrix. Also, suppose if you say there is a matrix with the three number of rows and three number of columns. So we assume that the first row will also contains three values. Second row will also contain three values, and third row will also contain three values. So this is a general assumption. However, what is given over here is they say that there is a varied number of columns in each row. What does this mean is, let's look at this particular matrix. And in this matrix, what we have here is, let me slightly zoom out for you. So in this particular matrix, what we have here is there are five rows. You have the five rows here, which are indexed from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there are five columns, again, which are indexed from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you notice over here is, in the first row, there are five elements are there. However, in the second row, the one element is missing. So it's not there. So this is not there at all. Whereas in the third row, this two part is not there. In the fourth row, it is not there. So in other words, what do I mean to say here is, you have a matrix which contains a varied number of columns. So in the first row, you have all the five columns. In the second row, not all the five columns are there. There are only four columns are there. Maybe in the third one, you may have more than five also is possible. But I've reduced it just to make it easier to understand. And in the fourth one, again, you have two. So number of columns which are there in every row need not be same. Whereas in general, whenever we talk about a matrix, we assume that every row contains the same number of columns. Suppose say if there are three columns are there in the first row, we assume that in the second row also three columns will be there, but that need not be true. And in this particular case, if you notice that the first row contains five columns, second row contains four columns, third contains three columns, and the last one contains two columns. That means to say that number of rows, a number of columns which are there in the matrix, they are not the same. For these two, you have only two columns are there. In the for this one, you have, if you notice that there are four columns are there, and for the first one, you notice that there are five columns are there. So that means to say that there is a varied number of columns in the different rows. What we are supposed to do is we are supposed to create this matrix, and we are supposed to find the row wise sum. So that means to say that what is the sum of the elements in this particular row. Okay, and we are supposed to print that. The same way, what is the sum of the elements in this row, and we are supposed to print that. This is what we are supposed to do. So let's go ahead with the program. We are going to go to the NetBeans, and I'm going to create a new project. Again, it's not really required that you have to create a new project for every exercise, you can directly use an existing project and then add one class and do it, because this is not going to be a complicated project altogether. In any case, I'm going to just create a project. So I'm going to say varied matrix. Okay, you can give any name for this one. Also, you can save it in different location rather than saving it in the my document. Let me finish it off, and the NetBeans will create a class called as varied matrix. Whatever the project name that you are giving, the same name class is created. If you don't want it to create, you can remove this check mark and say that don't create it. Okay. Now NetBeans has created, and the first two lines are actually remark statement. I'm going to just remove that remark statement, and let's go ahead with the static void main method, which is already added for us. And let's try to insert the matrix. So let's try to create a matrix, and you know very well this matrix contains different number of rows, no, different number of columns. So we are going to first create a matrix that has a fixed number of rows. Remember, in the matrix you cannot add the rows dynamically. So for that you can't use the arrays, you have to use the other data types, which you will learn in the theory classes. As of now, I'm not here to talk about theory, but in the array, when you try to create an array, number of rows are always fixed. You can have 5 rows, 3 rows, 10 rows, or anything, but number of columns can be varied. Now, let us try to create a matrix by specifying number of rows. So what we mean to say is I'm going to create a matrix that will contain some number of rows. Suppose say if you have the array that contains, in this case you have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 rows are there. Every row will point to a separate matrix. So every row will point to a separate matrix, and again this is also true. So everywhere you will have different matrices. So you can imagine this one as a separate array. So this is one array, this is another array, this is one more array, and this is one more array. All of them are pointed by the corresponding row number. So this is the pointed by this is pointed by this, and so on and so forth. So this, you can imagine this itself as one array. So you have one array which is trying to point to a one more array. You can have one more array here, let me say over here, which is going to point to one more array whose length may be varied. Again, you can have one more element that is pointing to a very different array. So every element here within this array is actually pointing to one more array. So this is pointing to one more array. This is pointing to one more array. So every element here, that is what I have told you, every element here is pointing to one more array. So let us first try to create this part. So what is this part? We are going to create an array like this, okay, with fixed number of rows. So here you have 5 rows are there. So this count is fixed. So we are going to create that one. Let's go ahead and let's create the array first. We are supposed to create the array. In order to create the array, we must know how many elements will be there in this particular array. So first let's read the total number of rows within the our matrix as such. So I'm going to say int rows, and I am going to use the scanner class. So I'm going to say SCNN, and I'm going to press Control Space. NetBeans will do the needful things for me. It's not only going to complete this statement, it's going to add import java.util.scanner. I will take the object as in, and I'm going to use a new scanner. I'm going to just use scanner, and I'm going to use the stream, that is input stream. So the system, I'm going to press Control Space, system dot in. Again, those who are new to this version of NetBeans, it's going to just tell you that this is an input for the source parameter. So that is the name of the parameter. You can ignore it. It's not part of the Java. It is just the NetBeans way of telling you that this particular parameter takes this value. Okay, so simple as that. Okay, so that it is easier for you to figure out which parameter is taking which value. Okay, done with this. So let me use yes out statement. I'm going to press yes out and tab, and I don't want print ln. I'm going to use a print. Okay, and you notice that it is saying yes here. If I zoom out, you will notice that yes here. Yes mean to say that you are supposed to, it's going to take the value for the parameter named yes here. I'm going to type enter total number of rows. Okay, I'm going to do that thing, and I'm going to read rows is equal to in dot next integer. Okay, I'm pressing Control Space and press enter. So I got the number of rows now. After this, I'm going to create a array now. So the matrix now, I'm going to say int. Let me call this matrix as A. Okay. The matrix has 2 dimensions, which is equal to new, and I'm going to say integer with total number of rows, but I don't know how many columns are there. So what is the meaning of this is, you are going to say that there is a matrix. You know how many rows will be there in the matrix. So you know how many rows are there. So that row is given over here. So when you say rows, it means to say that how many rows will be there. That number of rows are fixed. But how many columns will be there, that depends. So one may have a less number, other one may have more number, the next one may have a very less number. So that number of columns are going to vary, but number of rows is going to remain fixed. You cannot create a matrix without specifying rows and column. Empty, you can't do it. That is not allowed. You have to specify the total number of rows. You don't need to specify the number of columns. You can add it later dynamically. So in turn, what you have created is you have created one array, a kind of array wherein you know how many rows are there. Yeah. So you have created an array with the known number of rows. Now let's try to get the column. Now, because I have to find the sum here, I want to do it one more time. So this itself, you notice that this is also an array. So this part is also an array. In the same way, this is also an array. So this is going to contain the sum. So this is the sum of this row, and maybe this is the sum of this row, and so on. So I'm going to create the sum array also. I'm going to finish it up then and there rather than coming there and then creating one more time. So I'm going to say that I will create one array. Remember, this was the matrix I have created. So this is a matrix and this is just an array. I'm going to say sum, which is a array, and I'm going to say a new integer of number of rows. So that is the meaning. So what is the meaning of this is I have taken the same number of rows, because you know very well I have to find the row wise sum. That means to say that this array that I have created, this array, and this array, they must have the same number of rows, because you are going to find the corresponding number of the sum of elements in the corresponding rows of this matrix, and you are going to store it in the other array. So that means to say that total number of elements in this one and the total number of elements in this one must be same, and we have taken that as rows. So there will be these many elements, in this case 1 2 3 4 5 rows are there. In the same way, you have 1 2 3 4 5 rows are there. So both of them are same. Only difference is this is a matrix. So this part is a matrix, this is an ordinary array. This, in this, every element is going to point to a varied number of arrays. So let's go ahead and let's do the next part. And what is that next part you are going to do is you are going to fill the elements into the corresponding number of columns. So we are going to say how many columns will be there in the first row. Remember, this is the index that I've specified, but this will be the first row. Again, we are going to ask how many elements will be there in the second row, how many elements will be there in the third row, and so on and so forth. So we are going to specify how many elements. Oh, I think I have missed 3 here. So this is supposed to be 3 here. Anyway, that's okay. That's just a mistake here. So you get the array there. Okay, so let me make it as 3 here rather than make it as 4. Okay, so these are the indices that you have specified. You know very well, this is the row number 1, but it has the index 0. Arrays, you know very well, array index always starts from the 0, but we say first row, second row, third row, and so on. So when we say that this is total number of we just start the count from 1 2 3 4, but in the indices we start from 0 1 2 3 4. So let's go ahead and let's create this particular thing. So we are going to ask the user how many number of rows, how many number of columns will be there for the first row, how many number of columns will be there for the second row, how many number of columns will be there for the third row, and so on and so forth. So we are going to ask the user how many rows will be there continuously. For every row, we are going to ask the question. So we are going to use a for loop for simplicity. So I'm going to type for I and press tab. That means we'll do the needful things. However, even though this part is proper because both of them have the same number of rows, but I'm going to take it as m. What is this? M dot length is going to give you. M dot length is going to give you what is the length of this particular array. Yeah, what is the length? 1 2 3 4. So 4 will be the length of this array. What about this array? This is the sum array. So this is your sum array. What is the length of this sum array? Again, 1 2 3 4. This will be also 4 itself. Okay. So now let's go back to the program here. This is not required because NetBeans has just added that thing for me. So I'm going to use yes out, and I will remove this print ln statement, and I'm going to make it as let me make it as I think I will make it as a print f, which you are familiar with the C program. Okay, I'm using printf statement. Again, please ignore this part format. It's just added. You can't edit this one. Okay, even if you want to delete it, you are not going to do it because it is added by the NetBeans. So just ignore it. Okay, so I'm going to ask the user enter total. What is this spelling? Total number of what do you say? Columns in row number. I'm going to say row number. Okay, and I'm going to say percentage D, then put a column. Okay, what is this row number? Row number will be the corresponding row number. So what is the meaning of this is it is not completed. So it's not completed as such. So we are going to just tell the user that how many rows will be there, how many columns will be there in this row. So row number, even though remember this is index number is 0, but row number is 1. We count as row number 1, row number 2, row number 3, and so forth. But indices, we start from 0. So I'm going to just add 1 to this indices. So I is actually indices. I starts from 0. So I'm going to add 1 to this I. I'm going to say I plus 1. Why I plus 1 is because I is starting from 0. I cannot ask somebody, if I ask somebody that how many columns will be there in the row number 0, in the 0th row, people will say there is nothing called a 0th row, but indices are from 0. Row number we are generally counting. This is the first row, second row, third row, and so on. So first, remember that thing. So when we say, we are saying row number 1, but indices will be 0. So internally we are making adjustment, but for the world it is just the row number. So I have started with the 0. I'm compensating it 1, saying 0 plus 1 will be 1. So how is it going to appear? You are going to see enter the total number of columns in row number 1, and then you are going to do something. Okay, so you are going to accept that one. So let's read that one. I'm going to just say int column, and I'm going to just read it. I'm going to use in dot next integer. I'm going to just read that thing. So what is that I have read is just a minute. What is that I have done here is I am asking the user how many columns will be there in the row number 1. If the user says, okay, there will be 5 columns in the, no, or 5 columns will be there. So this is the first column, this is the second column, third column, fourth column, and so on. Then I'm going to ask what is the value in the column number 1, what is the value in the column number 2, what is the value in the column number 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to, in other words, I'm going to ask the user how many rows will be there in the column number in the row number 3, how many columns will be there. Suppose if the user says there is going to be 3 columns, so this is the first column, second column, and third column, then I'm going to ask give me the values for the first column, give me the values for the second column, give me the values for the third column. So then and there I'm going to do it. In other words, I'm going to ask, given a element over here, I'm going to ask the user how many columns will be there. Suppose if the user said there are 4 columns are there in this row, then I'm going to ask me what is the value of the first column, what is the value of the second column, what is the value of third column, and fourth column, and so on. Again, for the next row, I'm going to ask them how many columns will be there. If the user says only 2 columns will be there, I'm going to say what is the value of the first column, what is the value of the second column. So I ask what is the total number of columns, and then immediately I'm going to ask the next question, give me the values for those columns. So that is the next thing I'm going to do. So before I do this particular thing, before I do this thing, remember I have done here, I have said when I created this matrix, if you look at here, when I created this matrix, what I have said is there are so many number of rows will be there. Now the user is going to tell me that I want 5 columns for the row number 1. Then I have to create this part, that is the array with 5 columns. This was not done. So for the row number 0, there must be 5 columns. So for the row number I, generally ith row, okay, so just for ith row, how many columns will be there? The user says I have n number of columns, then I have to create those n number of columns for that row. How do I do that thing? I have my array with me. Okay, for the ith element, how many columns will be there? So that I'm going to specify here. So for the, let me zoom in for you. for the ith column, okay, I mean ith row, how many columns will be there? So how do I say that thing? So for the ith number of row, for the ith row, there will be, okay, how many columns? Columns that is specified by the user. So user has given me that there will be so many column, COL number of columns will be there. So many columns will be there. So I asked the user, enter the total number of columns. The user said these many columns will be there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, whatever it is. Those many columns will be there for the corresponding row. Okay, done. With that, we have done this first part. Now let's ask for the user to give me the values for the particular column. So I'm going to use a yes out again, but I am not interested in the println. I'm going to use the printf function because you're familiar with the printf function. So I'm going to say enter how many values. So if the user says there is 5 columns, if the user says there are 5 columns, then I'm going to say enter 5 values. Okay. If the user said there are 3 columns, I'm going to say enter 3 values. In general, how many? Whatever number of columns the user has set, so many values has to be there. So I'm going to say enter 5, 6, whatever it is, %d values into row number. So row number, whatever row number you have specified, %d. So what is this one? This is a column. Okay. Whatever it is, you can use the column because I've taken this as a column. Okay. And what is the next one? This part is column. The next part will be the what to say is so the column number, this is the row number. I'm going to take this one from here. You can type it, I suppose, but I'm a bit lazy, you know very well. So I'm familiar with that, copy paste somehow. So how is it going to look like? So this is going to look like this. So suppose if you execute this statement, in general, I'm giving you a sample. So you are going to say enter 5 values into row number 1. So this is how it's going to come. So this is a number of columns. Suppose if the number of columns, if the user says here total number of columns is 5, then you are going to say enter 5 columns or 5 values into the row number 1. So this is the row number 1. Okay. So I'm going to just put the 1 colon and a separation here so that they look neat when I run this particular thing. This is how it's going to look like. Now let's read all the values there. So I can read the values. So I'm going to use okay, for I is equal to, I'm going to use for I is equal to, remember it has just taken some dot length, but it generally takes it as wrong. So because we have already used I here, NetBeans is intelligent enough to guess that this is the iterator is I. The same iterator, if you are going to use it, you will end up in big trouble. So the NetBeans is going to say that that is not the one. So what I'm going to do is this is you can take this one as column itself, I less than column. It is one and the same. Okay. Because a column is the total number that you have specified here. I'm going to read the values into the array. So I'm going to say mith row and jth column. Remember, this is the, in general, this is the ith row and this will be the jth column. So this is ith row, this is I, row number I and column number j. When I varies, you are going to go from I equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. J will vary from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. When I is varying, you are going down. When j is varying, you are going to the right hand side. As the value of j changes, you are going to go to the corresponding row, the column numbers. As the I is varying, you are going to go for the corresponding row number. So you're going to iterate. In other words, you're going to iterate through all the elements of the array. So this is what you've done. So m of ij is equal to, I'm going to use the scanner function. I'm going to say in, and I'm going to say next integer. I don't want to mess up the things by making a lot of things. Now, as I enter the values, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the program bit more efficient. As I enter the value, okay, when I enter the value 10, 20, 30, and so on. So as I enter the value, I'm going to find their sum then and there. I'm going to find a 10 plus 20 plus sum. As the values are entered then and there, I'm going to add them to my sum matrix here. Now, you know very well, generally we write like this. Sum is equal to sum plus some new value. This is how we are going to write it. And we know very well sum has to be initialized. Otherwise, you will get the garbage value. So we will initialize the sum there. However, sum in this case is a matrix. This is a matrix. So this is if you take this, if you consider that as a the not matrix, the array, then this is the row number 0, this is the row number 1, row number 2. So every row, like an array, you know very well, you have the corresponding indices. So how do you write it? So you are going to write it sum of ith column. So I am going to type it in small case. I think this is in capitals. Sum of ith row is equal to, okay, old value of ith row plus whichever column that you are using. So which column you are using, whichever jth column that you are going to use, those values, corresponding jth value, you are going to use it. Okay. So what I am going to do, in other words, I am going to read a value into the ith row, general, I'm talking in general, ith row and jth column. So how do I say I'm reading a value into ith row and jth column? Remember, this matrix is named as M. So I'm going to say M ith row and jth column, I'm reading it. This is the value. That value, I have to add it to the corresponding matrix, that is the ith row of the array. So if I say this is the ith row, this is the ith row of the matrix, corresponding ith row of this array, that is, this array is the sum that you have. So corresponding ith row of this array, you have to add it to the ith row of this array. So this column, whatever value you are reading from this column, has to be added here to this one. So this is what I am going to do it. So how do I do that thing? So first of all, before I start the iteration, I'm going to initialize the ith row as 0. This is generally you are doing it. So this is general thing that you do. So before you write like this, I is equal to I plus 1. Before you write like this, you know very well you are supposed to initialize the I is equal to 1, I is equal to 2, I is equal to something. You have to do it in the same way. When you are doing this sum is equal to sum plus some column, if you are doing it this one, you have to also initialize this sum as 0. You have to say that the sum is equal to 0. But in this case, it's not so easy, that because its sum is not one element, sum corresponds to all the elements in the array. So there is an array. So you have to say the ith row of this sum, ith row of this sum. So this is the ith row of this particular, or the ith element of this array, has to be initialized with the 0. So that is what I have said. Ith element of this array is initialized to 0. Now I have to add it to this ith element itself, the column value. So I'm going to say that new value that is there, new value of the ith row is equal to old value of which is there in the ith row plus whatever is the value of the corresponding row number. So in other words, I am going to say here that suppose if this is your sum matrix, sum element over here, the ith row of this array is equal to the ith row. So in this case, I is 1 here, ith row of the matrix, and suppose a column number is 1 here. So this is this element. So this element is nothing but so what is how did you get this 20? You got this 20 because you are adding 2 plus 4 plus 2 plus 4. Where is this 4 gone? 4 plus 6 plus 8. So this 20 is nothing but the this plus this plus this plus this. So the corresponding value of the row is that is the row number and the column number. The corresponding value is added there. So how do you say this is m of ith row and jth column? So when you have this ith row and jth column, somewhere they are going to merge, and this value you are going to use that thing. So this is the value that I have done. In other words, as I enter the value, then and there I'm going to find their sum. Okay, so this is what I have done. I don't want extra lines in between. So this is what I have done. Now I'm going to print the given matrix just to make the output very easy. So I'm going to say yes out, and this time I'm going to use print line itself, and I'm going to say given matrix is, so this is my given matrix, this is print line, so it's going to print it in one line, and I'm going to use the for loop. So for, I'm going to say for I and press enter. NetBeans will do the needful thing. However, NetBeans will take it as sum because this is a second array. It's going to take that as sum. I'm going to make it as a m here because I'm printing the matrix, not this this part, not this part. I'm going to print this part. So this is the matrix that I'm printing it. So this is a m of I. This part is not required. Again, I need one more array there. So I'm going to one more for loop there. So I'm going to again type for I and press tab. And the NetBeans, if you notice, the NetBeans has changed the iterator variable as j, but it is taking the wrong value. So this is not the length of a sum, this is the length of this column, length of this column. If I is equal to 0, length of this column, length of this column. So length of ith column you have to take. Okay, so this is, if suppose if you say in general, if you say this is the ith row, length of ith row, how do you say that? Okay, you go here and you change this value. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say length of ith row. So m of I is going to give you the ith row there. So this is what you are going to say. This is the ith row. This, if suppose if m is 1 here, if the I value is 1, this is the length of ith row, that is m of I. M of, if I is 1, m of 1. So in general, we are talking about in general, we are not specific about that. And this is what you have done that. Okay, with this, let's start printing it. This you have already printed this so many times in your C programs. So I'm going to use a S out again, and I don't want to this print ln. I'm going to use the printf. You are already familiar with this very famous expression, and use this percentage %d and slash d. I'm going to zoom in for you, and slash d. You have seen this in your C program. Is it different from your C program? I don't think so. So this is the ith row, and jthcon. This you have done so many times in your C program, so I don't have to tell you anything about this in this one. And after this you need one line break. So how do you say that? Yes out, you're going to just type yes out. You will not type, remember, you may be tempted, let me tell you, to use printf and /n. You may be tempted to do that. The same thing is done by es out. It's going to print the one line for you. So whether you use this statement, it's up to you. I use this statement because I don't have to type anything during the examination and waste my time in typing something. So I will retain this one. This is same as printf/n. Okay, so it is your C program, you know very well, so you are so familiar with that. So this is going to print the, what is that, the matrix for you. Now let's print the sum of the value. So we are going to print this matrix, and we need to print this one also, the corresponding row sum. We have to print it. We will print it in the next line, one after the other. So I'm going to use one more for loop here. So I'm going to say for I and press enter. So for I is equal to, this time the NetBeans has taken it properly, and I'm going to use the yes out. Let me use yes out. Suppose if you didn't get it, see, I type for I and press tab. NetBeans will do the needful thing for me. So this is what I am doing it. I don't have to type so many things during the examination. So however, don't be under the impression that I'm going to use a NetBeans and cheat the examiner. It's not going to work out. Remember, during the examination, you are supposed to write the program and show it to the examiner. Only when the examiner says this program is correct, go and type. Then you can use Notepad, the Eclipse, the NetBeans. You can use anything. Remember, this is a second phase. You have to pass the first phase. And what is that first phase? Writing everything in your answer script. So don't think that I will cheat the examiner like this. What is this you are doing is you are saving your time during the examination. So rather than typing whole thing during the examination and making some spelling mistakes, sometimes you are going to type this in capital I, which then you will get a compiler error saying that that is not there. Instead of that, you will safely write it, type the program quickly and get the result quickly. This is what you are going to get. The NetBeans will not help you in the initial stage. Remember, you have to write and show it to the examiner. That means you must know the program before you do anything with the Eclipse or NetBeans or Notepad or VI editor or anything. So don't be under the impression that somehow NetBeans will help you. NetBeans can't help you unless and otherwise you have written the program and get it corrected from the examiner during the examination. Okay, so let's come back to the story of printing the sum here. I'm going to use your familiar printf statement. Okay, so I'm going to say printf, and I'm going to say sum of the sum of elements, let's say elements, or in row number percentage d is percentage d. So sum of the elements in the row number I plus 1. Remember, I am compensating 1 because you know very well you have to compensate 1 because it's an index number. So I'm just compensating 1, and I'm going to say sum of I. Okay, so how is it going to come is, for simple, for the your understanding, sum of elements in row number, let's say 5 is 15. It's going to come like this. So this will replace this d, will replace this value, row number value, and this will replace this value and you're going to get like this. So instead of this, you're going to see some value. Instead of this, you're going to see some value here. This is how you're going to get it. Let me save it and let me run this one. Before I run it, I'm going to just go here and do the clean build. Remember this, you don't have to do it unless and otherwise you get unexpected result. You just go here to the run and say clean build this project, because let it rebuild the entire project, and that is advisable also rather than getting unexpected errors. So once it has completed, you can see at this corner, you see that it is doing some work. Once it has completed, you can right click and then say run this file, or you can run this entire project, depends. If you have created only this is a fresh project, not this one, this is a fresh project. Where is this one? Only one file is there in this one. If you notice that only one file is there, you can run this project itself. Otherwise, if you have added it to some other project, you can just right click and then say run. One and the same. I'm going to click on this one and run it. So let me say that there are 4 rows are there. So total number of rows. Let me stop it. Okay. Let me make it slightly beautiful. I think I just forgot to add the, where is this, rows here and a space here. I'm going to just go here, and you notice a X mark over here, and it is saying running. Notice that if you go click on this X marks, it is going to stop the execution, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to? Yes, I'm going to say, and I'm going to just put let me make it beautiful by making slight one space colon and a space, so that it looks beautiful. Hopefully I've not done that mistake. Remember, it is not in error, but it's just to make the things look beautiful. Let me build it and let me run it. Okay, you can click here and run this one. So this time you notice it is appearing very beautifully, and this is what I wanted. So number of rows and a column and a space separation. Let me say there are 4 number of rows are there. So what is the meaning of saying that 4 number of rows is, I have said that there will be 4 number of rows will be there. How many columns are there? Not known. So it is now asking how many columns will be there for the first row number. So this is what it is asking me. So I am going to say there will be 5 number of columns in the first row number. Now it is going to ask me enter 5 values into row number 1. So what is the meaning of it? I said that in the row number 1, remember this is index, but this is row number 1, there is going to be 5 columns will be there. Now it is asking me, okay, give me all those 5 values. Give me all these 5 values. So I'm going to type all those 5 values there, one after the other. So I'm going to say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So I press enter here, and what has happened now is it has completed the first row part is over. Now it is saying, remember this is index 1, but row number is 2. In the second row number, how many columns will be there? If I say there are 4 number of columns, it is going to tell me, okay, give me all the 4 values for the second row. So this is what it is asking me. It is asking me how many number of columns will be there. Let me say there are 4 number of columns. It's going to ask me, give me those 4 values for those 4 columns. I'm going to say 2, 4, 6, 8 are the values. Now it is again going to tell me, because I have 4 columns are there. So it's going to say, okay, you have completed this part, you have completed this part. Now it is going to say for this row number, that is row number 3, how many columns will be there? Suppose if I say there will be 3 columns, it's going to ask me, give me 3 values. Okay, let me go and let me do it. Suppose if I say there are 3 columns are there, it's going to ask me 3 values into this particular column. So I'm going to say 3, 6, 9. Finally, in the same way, it's going to ask me for the last row number. I'm going to say 2 rows will be there. I'm going to just press enter, and it's going to ask me some values. I'm going to say 11 and 22 are the values. When I press enter, I'm going to get this one. Okay, only there is one other problem. Let's fix that problem slightly. One problem is that, so I got the matrix with the 5 rows, 4 rows, 3 rows and 2 rows. I got everything, but if you notice here, the first sum is 150. As you can notice here, first sum is 150. However, I just forgot to add /n there, so it is continuing in the same line. So what is the solution for that is, after printing, sorry about that, after printing I should have put so here I've printed some of the elements in the row number %d, and after that I should have used /n, that is the new line, because I'm using the printf statement here. I should have used the /n there, so /n for a new line. So let me quickly rerun this. I will have to, because my particular installation does not compile it directly. I will rebuild the project, and then I'm going to run this thing again. I'm going to do it quickly up to this point. So I said there are 4 rows will be there. So how many columns will be there? 5 columns will be there, and I have typed 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And in the second row, I said 4 columns will be there, and I'm going to say 2, 4, 6, 8. In the third row, I said 3 values or 3 columns will be there. This is, I'm just repeating the last explanation, whatever I've done. And then I'm going to say for the fourth, only 2 columns will be there, and I typed in the previous case 11 and 22. And now you notice that the things are coming. So I have added a /n here. So just here /n will make the magic for me. So this is what you're going to see. The first row, this sum will be shown here. Second row, this sum will be shown here. Third row, this sum will be shown here. And the fourth row, this sum will be shown here. So all the sums are being shown there. This is what we are supposed to do it in this exercise. Thank you for your interest. We will meet again in the next exercise. Thank you.